Right, so whilst you were busy planning your summer holiday or arguing about whether the next series of Love Island will be any good, Rachel Reeves has been quietly cooking up reforms to ISAs that could leave millions of Britons absolutely bewildered and significantly worse off. The Chancellor, who campaigned on economic competence and stability, is now proposing changes to the ISA regime that investment experts are warning could actually discourage people from investing rather than encourage them. Because nothing says we want you to build wealth quite like slashing allowances, introducing penalties, and wrapping the whole thing in so much complexity that even financial advisors need a lie down after reading the proposals. It is economic policy as written by someone who has never actually tried to help a normal person open a savings account. Quick favor, if you are loving this financial chaos, hit that subscribe button and smash the notifications bell. Over 94% of you have not yet. It is completely free, takes 2 seconds, and keeps us bringing you the truth about what Westminster is doing to your money. Cheers if you did. Right, back to the ISA carnage. So let us establish exactly what is happening here, because the details matter enormously, and they are frankly quite alarming. Last year's budget from Rachel Reeves confirmed a cut in the cash ISA limit from £20,000 to £12,000 for anyone under 65. That is an £8,000 reduction, a 40% cut in the amount of money you can save tax-free in cash each year. Now, the government's justification for this is presumably that they want to encourage younger people to invest in stocks and shares rather than just keeping everything in cash, which sounds reasonable in theory. Investing does generally produce better returns over the long term than cash savings. But here's the problem. Cutting the cash ISA allowance whilst simultaneously making stocks and shares ISAs more complicated and less flexible is not encouraging investment, it is just punishing savers. Stocks and shares ISAs are also set to be overhauled by the Treasury, which prompted discussions between HMRC, savings providers, and city representatives about the future direction of these tax-efficient accounts. When government departments start having urgent discussions with industry representatives, that is usually code for the government has proposed something absolutely mental and the industry is desperately trying to talk them out of it before it becomes law and ruins everything. Justin White, the Chief Operating Officer at investment app Caldi, has raised concerns that a series of regulatory changes could leave inexperienced investors bewildered rather than empowered. Bewildered rather than empowered is such a perfect phrase because it captures exactly what is wrong with so much government policy. The stated intention is always empowerment, giving people the tools and incentives to make better financial decisions. But the actual effect is bewilderment because the rules are so complicated, the restrictions so arbitrary, and the penalties so unclear that people just give up and do nothing rather than risk getting it wrong. White contends that policymakers' intentions to boost investment participation are sound, but the execution may prove counterproductive down the line once reforms are implemented. This is the charitable interpretation, is it not, that the government means well but is just incompetent at implementation. The less charitable interpretation is that the government wants to squeeze more tax revenue out of people's savings and is using complexity as a smokescreen to hide what they are actually doing. Either way, the result is the same. Ordinary savers lose out. White specifically highlights concerns about plans to reassess whether money market funds and similar products are too cash-like for inclusion in stocks and shares ISAs. Right, so let us unpack this because it is genuinely important and also quite mad. Money market funds are essentially low-risk investment products that invest in short-term government bonds and high-quality corporate debt. They are more stable than equities, more liquid than many bonds, and they serve as a useful stepping stone for people who are nervous about diving straight into the stock market. They are the financial equivalent of the shallow end of the pool, where you can get comfortable with investing before swimming into deeper waters. And the government is now proposing that these products might be too cash-like to qualify for stocks and shares ISAs, which is bonkers because they are investments. They carry risk, albeit lower risk than equities. They are not cash sitting in a bank account, but apparently, in the Treasury's infinite wisdom, they are not investment-y enough to deserve tax-free treatment. So if this goes through, anyone using money market funds as a cautious entry point into investing would either have to switch to riskier assets they are not comfortable with, or lose the tax benefits, or just give up entirely and keep everything in cash outside of an ISA where it gets taxed. White argues that such restrictions could undermine savers who use lower-risk investments as a gateway into markets after exhausting their reduced cash ISA allowance. This is the key point. Imagine you are someone in your 30s who's never invested before. You've managed to save £12,000, which is your new cash ISA limit. But you've got more savings beyond that, maybe another £8,000 or £10,000, and you're thinking about investing it, but you're nervous because you've heard stories about people losing money in the stock market. So you look into money market funds, which offer slightly better returns than cash, but without the volatility of equities. And you think, right, this seems like a sensible first step. I'll put some money here, get comfortable with the concept of investing, and maybe later I'll buy some actual stocks. But now the government might say, sorry, money market funds don't count. You can't put those in a stocks and shares ISA, so you'll have to pay tax on any returns. What do? Most people faced with that choice will just keep the money in cash outside of an ISA, pay the tax, and never take that first step into investing. The government, by trying to force people into riskier investments, will actually just discourage investment altogether. It's policy designed by people who have never actually talked to a normal saver about how they make financial decisions.
Now, here is where the government apparently realizes they might have made a tiny error in judgment. GB News reports that Rachel Reeves is gearing up to dial back the business rate relief for the hospitality industry. But wait, plot twist. The relief is expected to be extended in a bid to assist locally loved pubs up and down the nation. So which is it? Dialing back or extending? This is the kind of confusing messaging that makes people's heads spin. Are they helping or hurting? Are they fixing the problem or making it worse? The lack of clarity is almost as frustrating as the policies themselves. Businesses across the country are now waiting for confirmation of what the government actually plans to do. They are in limbo, unable to plan properly, unable to make informed decisions about their future because they do not know what the tax landscape will look like. Industry groups are saying any announcement must recognize the scale of the pressures facing the high street. That seems like a reasonable request. Acknowledge reality, understand the crisis, act accordingly. Enter stage left Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, who has absolutely no intention of letting this opportunity pass without landing a few political punches. Speaking to GB News last week, she said Labour MPs have come back from Christmas break where they were banned from every single pub in the country, and they suddenly realized that people do not like them. That is why they are pushing for this U-turn. That is delightfully cheeky. The image of Labour MPs returning from Christmas to discover they are persona non grata in pubs nationwide is almost too perfect. Sorry, mate, Chancellor's orders has apparently become a legitimate reason to refuse service. Badenoch did not stop there. Conservatives saw this as soon as it happened. Remember my budget speech and I talked about how Rachel had done absolutely nothing for pubs? Well, the chickens have come home to roost. Now, we can debate whether the Conservatives have any moral authority to criticize Labour's handling of the hospitality sector, given their own track record in government. But the point stands that this was a predictable disaster. Industry experts warned what would happen. Publicans warned what would happen. The opposition warned what would happen. And it happened. The chickens have indeed come home to roost, and they are sitting at the bar demanding someone explain why their local is about to close.
The broader context here is important. Britain is in the middle of a cost of living crisis that shows no signs of ending. Energy bills remain stubbornly high, food prices have increased dramatically, wages have not kept pace with inflation. People are making impossible choices between heating and eating, between paying rent and buying necessities. In this environment, asking them to also shoulder increased costs for their occasional social outings is a bridge too far. For businesses like the Rock Inn, the squeeze is coming from both directions. Customers have less money to spend, so revenue drops. Meanwhile, operating costs keep climbing. Energy bills, supply costs, wages, business rates, everything is more expensive. The profit margin gets thinner and thinner until it disappears entirely, and then you're running a business at a loss, which is obviously unsustainable. Something has to give, and usually what gives is the business itself. It closes, another empty building on the high street, another community hub lost forever. The pub industry has been sounding alarm bells for years. Pubs are closing at an alarming rate. Some estimates suggest dozens close every week. Each closure represents jobs lost, communities weakened, social infrastructure destroyed. And it is not just the economic impact. There's a genuine social cost when pubs disappear. For many people, especially older people or those living alone, the pub is their primary social outlet.